everyone. So to start off, we got some interesting movement by the IDF here in the Gaza Strip. And of course, we see a lot of airstrikes going on all across northern Gaza out here. And what's most of note out here is that the IDF seemingly has moved broadly eastern from their original positions. As we know, they were pretty much caught up in the Al Shifa hospital out here, and they seem to have largely pushed out and away from that. So they've taken pretty much a large majority of central Gaza City and pushed out further. And for what I'm assuming what's going to happen here is they're probably going to push all the way out of to the border out here and seemingly cut Gaza in half again, or at least the northern Gaza at least into at least a third out here. So that's what I'm assuming is happening out here. And other than that, there are clashes still going on in West Bank out here, as we can see up in the north. And just talking about Hezbollah, we can see that clashes going on between them and the IDF have largely turned down. And um, so just thinking about what's going on here and as to why it's largely we haven't seen too much and not expected too much in terms of Hezbollah involvement. So I read an article earlier talking about the Ayatollah Khamenei talking about the just conflict, and what he said here is that Iran is not going to get involved, and by extension, I'm assuming that that also means Hezbollah is not really going to get directly involved in terms of any much more than this. So that's pretty much what the supreme leader of Iran told Hamas, is that he is not going to get Iran involved in this, since apparently, since Hamas did not give Iran or any of their allies like any notice of what they were doing on the October 7th attacks. Since they didn't give anybody any notice, they aren't going to get any help. So just in terms of that, I'm not, of course, expecting anything more to. I'm not really expecting this to spill over any more or any further than this. Although if Israel does want to step up its attacks against Hezbollah, then I assume that they're going to reciprocate in proper. But other than that, yeah, that's really what's going on, at least on the ground in Gaza right now. So some footage that I thought was really interesting that is coming out here. Of course, we haven't really seen too much dense urban fighting, but this is some footage that was released by Israel of some of the fighting that has been going on out here. I'm only going to show a couple stills of it just so you can get an idea of what's going on. But I also wanted to largely talk about not just that we haven't seen so much of this, but also apparently on TikTok, of course, you've probably already heard, is that the manifesto by the guy who did, the 9/11 attacks. I think you guys already know his name, but one of his manifestos, I believe it's called Letter to America, went largely viral on TikTok, and a lot of people were apparently agreeing with it. But I decided to take a read of it, and in general, I have studied Islam, and I have studied and I've listened to a lot of talks by sheikhs and things like that. So just in general, when I read what he's written, like obviously he is a believer. So just in general, but when he talks about things in his letter, like if you the reason why Americans deserve to die is because if you voted in America, you deserve to die. If you pay taxes in America, you deserve to die. If you are a part of the population, essentially, you deserve to die. So that obviously, if there are people who relate to that and agree with that in parts of his letter, then uh, I I don't think I would personally agree with those kinds of people. But what I can see the people are agreeing with are the statements that he makes about Palestine, as we can see here, and uh, the people who were uh, like the Jewish people who were moved into Palestine and created Israel, and in turn displacing a lot of the people who were originally there, which I believe is largely why a lot of people started to agree with his letter. But just in general, that's pretty much what he talks about. He also talks about, the the ongoing war on terror that was, going on at that time and is still, I believe, kind of going on. Um, also talks about Chechnya, which is interesting too, because I know a lot of mujahideen were in Chechnya, uh, uh, largely fought in Chechnya, and then sort of moved to, what went on in Iraq and Afghanistan, and also Syria. So it's just interesting to see those conflicts, sort of, kind of converge in that way. But I was looking at another still out here of, the tanks operating here in such dense, urban environment. So, it's definitely a really complicated situation that's going on out there. But I just wanted to show and just talk about those couple things. Now, moving over to our other conflict of interest, we can see some movement by Russian forces out here in the town of Kislivka. We can see them moving seemingly closer to this town, and also a bit of a frontline clarification out here in the north. And don't get confused with this town Yahidna out here. This isn't the same Yahidna that's out by Bakhmut area. This is the Kharkiv sort of front out here. And what we can see is the front line near Shumi has been clarified. So if we zoom out a little bit, we can get a better idea of what's been going on out here. So yeah, we can see that seemingly the actually 2014 line of the line pre 2022 has been seemingly moved or clarified out here. So I'm wondering if perhaps this is a front that's spreading out here, that maybe this is an area that Ukraine is perhaps trying to push, or maybe this is just some clarification. We don't really know that information, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And the last is, of course, Avdiivka area. We can't really give an update without talking about this area, since, how much Russians have seemingly bowed out in here near the Krasnohorivka area. So as we can see, Russian forces seemingly pushing a bit more out here, extending the front line towards sort of near Avdiivka proper. And also we can see that over here they're also perhaps trying to push from not just the south but also the north, perhaps cutting it off, cutting it in half maybe, or just trying to go, pinch it in two different directions to put further pressure on Ukrainian forces. Now, taking a look at some of the combat that's being reported out here, we can see that there have been 62 combat engagements reported with Russian forces out here by Ukraine, which, of course, is about in line of what we've been expecting. Although I am a bit surprised that this renewed offensive, has been going on for so long. Of course, once it starts getting colder, I'm expecting, these combat engagements to sort of, wind down. But from what I've heard, of course, is what you probably already heard, is the same, that Russia is looking for any kind of victory out here, whether that's starting, considering Putin is going up for re-election in quotes, soon here. So they're trying to kind of look for a victory on the front line that's probably in the form of Avdiivka, and just general victory in terms of just the war in general, and trying to promote it in a way that it's going well, like, don't worry about it. So that's probably why they're just trying to push so hard now. But as we know, it gets pretty cold out here in Ukraine. So once winter really hits, from what I understand, the Russian army, especially last winter, was not very well equipped in terms of gear to keep them warm. So if it's anything like last year, I'm assuming they're probably going to be a bit better equipped. But with such high losses, it's hard to keep an army equipped when you're throwing guys out there that are they can't really come back. So just in general, other than that, of course we see a decent amount of shelling, perhaps not as much as we've seen lately, but also some of the Kherson area, which is interesting, since we know we've been talking about that area quite a bit lately. But other than that, that's all really the combat that is reported out here. So here's a clip out here that's being reported near Vodiana, which is, of course, in the Avdiivka direction. So just first of all, just taking a look at the field out here, we can see how completely damaged and filled with holes out here from artillery and whatnot. And also we can see a smoking vehicle out here already. So, this isn't even what we're talking about. There is actually an MTLB that is being driven out here. So what happened in this clip right before This moment here is that there was a Russian soldier who was on it, and he seemingly just let it go. And we can see here that it actually is loaded with explosives, but it actually runs into an anti-tank mine, and we can see here that yeah, it detonates. So it didn't even make it to its destination, which is womp womp. But other than that, what I really want to talk about here is this right here. So the Russian soldier runs to these blown out vehicles out here. And what I've noticed, especially the past few days, is that seemingly perhaps something in Russian doctrine has changed, or maybe maybe their commanders have told them to start doing something broadly across the front line. But what I've noticed is that they started taking shelter in blown out and destroyed vehicles, which is interesting since I've never seen that happen until the past week or so. So, like I said, what I'm assuming is perhaps they got something, maybe some change in their doctrine or some change in strategy where they're going to start taking shelter in these vehicles, perhaps using them as cover whenever they advance or assault a certain position, or just using them to, after you bail out a vehicle, just to hide in it and you start using it as cover, which I suppose makes sense. But considering some of the footage I've seen, using these as shelter now kind of makes it a target. So, take that as you will. But yeah, just in general, that's something that I've noticed in terms of the combat footage lately. All right, I'll talk about Myanmar here. So we got some really interesting footage. Number one, shout out to this guy because I've been really interested in this conflict as to how it's been developing, considering how much is happening out there, and how much success the anti-junta forces are having against the Myanmar government. But this is a clip by the KNDF here, which is the Karani Nationalities Defense Force. So they are just more anti-junta forces, and so it's interesting here. So this guy, this is the chief commander out here of these forces out here, and he's pretty much just telling the individuals to surrender out here. And it's interesting because every time he talks to his guys, like he'll say a command like come out, and my soldiers won't lay a finger on you. And then he'll address his soldiers like, that's right, correct, and then like the entire every soldier under him, you can hear them say yes at the same time, or whatever yes is in their language. Um, so it's just interesting to see how, you would think that with irregular forces they wouldn't be so proper or well trained, and yet these guys seem to be quite well trained and quite well disciplined out here by their commander out here. And so, later we can see the Myanmar forces out here. They surrender, and a lot of them are wounded, which is why I don't really want to show too much of this video. It's because some of them are quite severely wounded. But just talking about this clip, this is what I really wanted to show. And it's just interesting to see how this conflict is further developing the longer it goes on. All right, well, other than that, that's all I really want to talk about here today, other than, kind of touching base back on the whole TikTok thing of, the letter to America going viral. Like I said, it really, really rubs me the wrong way that so many people can find that so appealing. Albeit, when you look at a conflict like this, of course, there are people who are fighting in it that find it appealing, in terms of the attacks we saw against Israel. That, of course, there are going to be individuals who agree with that, but it's so off-putting that you know seemingly some people could just read a letter and then suddenly agree with what that individual has to say, when there are so many terrible and hateful things in it. Even though there are a couple things in there that highlight the bad things that have happened against these people, and suddenly a few bad things has to turn into a very, very large more bad things. um so yeah, that's all I really want to talk about for today. If there's anything else you want me to talk about, or any other conflicts you want me to take a closer look at, of course let me know. But other than that, thanks for watching.